Benjamin Johnson, welcome to the conversation today.
Hey, thanks. Great to be here.
Great to be with you. You're joining us from Dallas. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about leveraging goal setting and OKRs to create maximum efficiency in your team. It's a real pleasure to be able to sit down with you and have this conversation. And as we get started, I wanted to share Benjamin's bio with everybody. Benjamin Johnson is a serial technical co-founder and has a track record of success and hands-on opening source programming experience. He has a wide range of being both a board level advisor and founder, but also an in-depth understanding of how things work. Through his 20 plus years as a software developer and leader, he has gained extensive experience with remotely distributed development teams and business hacks. Benjamin is the CEO and founder of Particle41, a dev firm founded by industry veterans that aims to help companies accelerate their initiatives through software development, DevOps, and data science. A wonderful background, Benjamin. It's a pleasure to be with you. Is there anything you would like to highlight by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in?
No, just to say that I love helping people with their business, usually from the technical co-founder seat.
Yeah.
Typically, though, I do some fractional CTO work with folks, and then we have a full service end-to-end dev shop. And we just really like to come alongside businesses, partner with them, and help them hit their business and technology goals.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that is awesome work. Wonderful that you're able to do all of that and help folks with those needs. And wonderful that you have the experience, working with remotely distributed teams. You know, I think in your field, that's been a thing for a really long time. Even, pre-COVID. COVID launched and forced so many of us into that space where we kind of were forced to do that. But folks like you have been doing it for a long time. you
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
you've kind of been in that space, doing it for a long time. And I think you have a lot of hacks and you have a lot of experience of how to do that effectively. And how to utilize OKRs, goal setting, to do that effectively. And we're in a day and an age, we're in an environment where a lot of executives, a lot of leaders are doing these back to office mandates, wanting everyone to come back to be physically in the same office space, even if in a hybrid environment where maybe sometimes it is remote, but wanting people to be back, physically. I suspect, though, in DevOps and in a lot of these types of software development roles, we're still looking at probably a lot of remote distributed teams. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think if you compare software development to an industry like manufacturing, or we love to use like a special operations or like military metaphor,
Hmm.
uh, the operation, the work is always happening outside of the headquarters. And
Hmm.
the kind of the pre-COVID idea, maybe even the Silicon Valley idea, is that the business and the coders would sit together in the same space and collaborate in real time. It's just not realistic compared to what we see in reality, right? We have people now all over the place, very distributed, even within the business. Like I'm finding that even if I want to go have a strategic meeting, a lot of people are having to coordinate and come into some central destination. So I think remote distributed teams has just become the new normal, and it has been even before COVID. So we
Hmm.
have to have processes that embrace that. The manufacturing floor is the way it is for a reason, because that's the most efficient place to make the products. And I think software also has a factory metaphor where sometimes leaving the developers alone to write code is actually the best process. Rather than like that idea that they're within arm's length. So if I have a good idea, I can go tell them. I'm not sure that's the most productive, and remote distributed work teams do make that more challenging, but maybe for good reason.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And obviously, if we're that's not our point in this conversation today to talk about distributed teams or remote teams generally. And obviously, it depends on the type of work you're doing and the type of organization and the products and service you're providing and so on and so forth. Um, but yeah, let's look individually at like uh, what needs to be done and when it makes sense, and do what makes sense
Yeah,
for
I
yeah.
think the segue, John, to OKRs here is that with you're working with remote development teams as leaders, the best thing you can do is get out in front of those developers with what you want. It's again, I'll use the manufacturing metaphor. If you know how many products of a certain type you need, what are all the variations? If you know how many shirts of a certain color, and you know that plan out, you can do things that are more efficient. So in software development, if you know essentially the next set of work that you want, that's the highest priority, and you're out in front of them. And OKRs and goal setting is essential to do that. If you don't know where you're going, then um, at least in software development, if you don't have a plan ahead, then you kind of do this like spoon feeding thing, and it's grossly inefficient. So as leaders, we have to figure out like what results are we trying to accomplish, and the OKRs and goal setting fits very well into that.
Yeah, yeah. And your space is not my space. Like I don't have experience in software development myself. So as I'm picturing this, what I'm picturing, I don't know if you're familiar with the I think it's HBO, the HBO show Silicon Valley. Are you familiar with that show?
Yeah, very.
So
Yeah.
that is what is showing up in my mind right now as we're having this conversation, and you're talking about like within arm's reach and having people being able to like collaborate and like bounce ideas off of each other. And I'm having all these like silly scenarios pop up in my head of what's going on. And largely what I'm seeing is distraction. So
Right. Right.
you know and so yeah, like are there times when people need to be able to like collaborate? Sure, absolutely. But are there times when they just need to like buckle down and just like get the code out? Probably. Like that seems like probably what needs to happen more often than not with coders and software developers. I don't know, that's not my field, but that seems like probably what needs to happen more often than not. So that seems like what you're describing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Focus is
anyways,
currency. In any STEM field, focus is a currency, right? The more focus you have on the right sets of things, the better your work will be. So, yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about.
yeah. And by the way, great show if anyone is looking for a recommendation. All
Yeah,
right, so
absolutely.
let's talk a little bit more then about like the goal setting and the OKR piece. What are some of the types of like how have you structured the OKRs with some of your distributed teams? As you have people working in different time zones, you have them working, often they have kind of different backgrounds, cultures, different ways of viewing things. How have you set them up and structured them in a way that can be effective?
Yeah, so software development has its own way of
Mm,
managing productivity. These
yeah.
agile processes like Scrum and Kanban. Where we use OKRs is more outside of the client engagements, more at the senior level of like how are we trying to organize the business, and then I help other people, my clients, with the same kind of think of it as a business operating system, or this idea that what do I want to accomplish in what are my 3 to 5 year goals, or objectives, and then what do I want to accomplish this year, and then we break that further down into 90-day objectives, and then folks within the organization can really think clearly about, well, what's the one thing that I need to accomplish within this week. But
Hmm.
the trick is that we're all thinking about the things we should do or could do, and we're many of us are good at writing lists and trying to and having kind of an overwhelming set of things that are applicable to us that might move the needle, might not move the needle. But it's damaging to productivity to say, well, what should I do now? What like having
Hmm.
that cue. And so OKRs is a high level mechanism to try to solve that day to day problem. So what I find most people struggle with when we do this at first is they think of those tasks and they just think of the most important task and they set that as like their 90-day objective. Or and
Mm,
that's not the idea. The idea is really what outcomes represent. So the easiest ones are like revenue targets, a number of customers that you want to maybe impact. Maybe you're in social media or like media industry, so you want a certain amount of reach. But there are, generally speaking, in any business, these high level numbers. And so I find that the annual objectives generally are just like an idea around sizing. Like, are we going to hit 12 million or 120 million? Like, what kind of size of business are we? And is
hmm
that a 40% year over year growth? And how do we feel? Is that stretching us a little bit risky? And kind of satisfies that SMART goal acronym. But then like cascading that down into like, what can I do as maybe the HR director, or what can I do as the VP of sales to directly contribute to that within the next 90 days? And then your area of focus or your discipline tends to have its own set of metrics on how you intend to hit those annual objectives. And what we're seeing with our clients is that time compression is a really important factor.
mm.
In the past, people had said, well, I'm going to set this OKR to hit, $12 million annually, and sign up, 100 new clients. And they say, okay, that's my annual goal. And if they don't compress their activities to say, well, what have I accomplished this month? Or what have I accomplished this quarter? And have urgency and intention around those time compressed intervals, then typically they get into Q3, Q4, and there's a lot of panic. And cultures that tend to operate that way, just are ripe with burnout, and folks getting into that August to October timeframe are just like pedaling like mad, and doesn't make for a great holiday season.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. So we have hopefully we set good goals. We have good OKRs that make sense. They're in alignment, um, and all of that. We have to be careful of this burnout piece. And there's always pressure to have, higher goals. Um, and frankly, there it's hard to have the right goals. There's this saying that, what matters is hard to measure and what can be measured doesn't matter, right? And so sometimes it's just like it's almost intangible. Like, it's just hard to grasp like what really is the essence of what needs to actually be measured the most, right?
Yeah.
To what really matters the most. How have you found like what's the best way to grasp, what those things are, so that you're measuring the right things that are in alignment, um, so people can focus on the right things and then not be burned out because they're not
Yeah.
chasing their tail around things that don't matter.
Yeah. And a lot of these things will sound cliche because they are kind of like business management fundamentals, but you would take your revenue target and you would try to figure out a number of leads that you need. Leads should be an indicator of, if I have a functioning sales process that's working, then a certain number of leads should turn into a certain number of closures, which will then translate to my revenue target, just as an example. I think sometimes we can get into a little bit of analysis paralysis and figuring out
Yeah.
what to measure everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, I've really found that if a department, like if my finance department has a couple of different measurements they're trying to impact, collection rate, and that's one measure, number of days to my latest invoice, or something like that. And then that's where the collaboration occurs. Like, what really matters here? Um, Maybe if we have one outlier that's really causing us a problem and we've expressed it and we've explained it, rather than changing the metric, what if we just set the outlier aside so that we're back within something that feels right? Um, and yeah, we just want everybody to be thinking about their the objective that they are most trying to influence in their work, and allowing people to not only be tactical but also strategic. And that's the key, that everybody has a certain percentage of their mind share that's working on the business, not just in the business. Because then we're not just grinding away, feeling like we're in the grind. But if we're like, oh, there's a reason and I understand why, that's what OKRs are really about. I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm not just in a hamster wheel.
Yeah, yeah. And we do often find ourselves on that hamster wheel, spinning, churning, and not making a lot of progress. And so, yeah, not, like you said, not getting trapped in that analysis paralysis, finding reasonable metrics to focus on, um, and going after them, and not getting trapped on the hamster wheel. Absolutely, things that need to be that we need to pay attention to. And ultimately we're going for efficiency, we're going for productivity, while also recognizing we're human and we don't want to burn ourselves out. We need to recognize the importance of sustainability in all of this. So efficiency at the cost and expense of sustainability is not effective, right? And sometimes we forget that, or we can potentially forget that. So I don't want to be churning through my people, just because it's efficient and I can get more productivity out of them in the short term. If that means, I'm just going to churn through them, and then ultimately I'll have to find new people. I'll have to retrain people. I'll have to, all of that. There's other costs associated with that. There's learning curve and uptime and all that kind of stuff that can be frustrating and hard in and of itself. Plus, there's the human side of it that is just, you don't want to do that to people. So there's all those types of things we need to be considering also.
Yeah, totally. I think one interesting thing would be if you were listening to this and you were like, you felt like your role was down in the organization, like you didn't feel like you were really impacting the organization as a whole. Maybe you don't have a leadership position, but like if a call center agent, how cool would it be if a call center agent said to her boss or his boss, like, how does my work impact your goals? How am I being measured, first off? And how does that impact your department's objectives? And then how does that tie into what the company is trying to accomplish right now? Now, I'm not saying that in every single one of those conversations, um, there would be perfect clarity. But questions precede clarity, right? So like asking the right question could offer this opportunity for the call center agent to go like, wow, if I get X number of, like, if I'm doing a good job, then the NPS score of the company is increasing, and then we're winning market share away from our competitors. Wow, my job really does matter. And then you go home at night going like, hey, I had a bunch of great calls, rather than what I think oftentimes happen is like, yeah, I don't really matter, I just need to take my calls and make sure my average call time is short, and it just doesn't connect, and then we kind of go through life robbed of joy. And it's the same work, but just that outlook and that perspective of like, why does this matter, and getting clear on that could put a spring in your step, and make you excited to do your work, and empathize with
Yeah.
your leadership, right? And that could be a huge game changer. We really haven't changed anything other than us and the way that we look at our contribution to the company's greater good.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Great points and insights there. Well, Benjamin, this has just been a great conversation, and time has flown by. I note the time. I need to let you go here in just a minute and move on to your next thing. But before we wrap things up for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Yeah, sure. So I love connecting with people. So my LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me. I'm Benjamin Johnson on LinkedIn. I have a book appointment link on LinkedIn. So I am extremely easy to set a 30-minute meeting with. And just, I love to chat with folks. So whether you're looking for career advice or you're a CEO that would like some help with their 2025 technology roadmap, I am easy to get connected with and I love to help. So yeah, I really enjoy helping with strategy because I think when people know why they're doing what they're doing, they're
Hmm.
ultimately more satisfied with what they do, and so that's just very driving for me. So we love to help
Ab-
folks.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Benjamin. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Benjamin can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.